bottom line for young people and basketball players is that it's about money.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, for the most part, America is about money. But young people need to understand that if you're black and you don't also have dignity and respect to go along with the money, that you will still be treated like a nigger. For example, I remember reading a story where Denzel Washington, who makes an average of $12 million per film now, said that he was going someplace and got on an elevator, and a white woman got on the elevator with him, and he said everything in her demeanor suggested that she thought that he was going to rob her and rape her. And then, so here's Denzel Washington, a multi-millionaire 10 times over, and he is assumed to be a black mugger.
That vibe that you talk about in your book.
And so Denzel said that he looked at this woman and he wanted to say, "Woman, I can take out my wallet and knock you down." You know? But here he is, and this is how he's regarded. And so it is about money, but it's not only about money. And young people need to understand that.
Nathan, let's talk about the basketball stars now. Let's talk about some of them a little bit. You mentioned some of them in your book. We're talking about Michael Jordan, who's a phenomenal player. We know that. But you also talked about some of the things that he didn't do.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, Michael Jordan, when there was a political campaign in North Carolina, when Jesse Helms, who is a longtime racist, was running for re-election, and there was a guy who was who had been mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, I forget his name, was running against Jesse Helms. And the polls showed they were neck and neck. Many blacks went to Michael Jordan, who got his start in North Carolina, and said, "Listen, will you give the brother an endorsement?" And you know what Michael Jordan said? Michael Jordan said no. And you know why? He said, "Republicans buy sneakers also." Now, I like basketball, like Michael Jordan, on the one hand. On the other hand, I understand that Michael Jordan, if it were not for black people making sacrifices, Michael Jordan probably would not be where he is today. You know why? Because those sacrifices made it possible for him to go to that large white university and get national exposure and top flight training. Michael Jordan has a responsibility to give something back. And because Michael Jordan had no sense of consciousness, he wasn't able to do that. Now, going back to the issue of being treated like a nigger, you may have read recently, Michael Jordan served as, I think, head of basketball operations for the Washington Wizards. When the owner of the Washington Wizards got fed up with Michael Jordan, you know what he did? He fired him. Michael Jordan got fired. No advance notice, nothing. And so here is an example where Michael Jordan, I think he's worth, I forget, maybe $300 million. Megabucks. And he can get fired, all right? The greatest player of all time.
And
can be
it goes
fired.
beyond money.
Absolutely.
We got more with Nathan McCall in just a moment.
Vicki White, host of Open Window. We are interested in creating programming based upon local organizations and services. Please accept this invitation to call us or email us with your interests, ideas, and concerns. Let's review them. We are also in need of sponsors. If you want to be a part of supporting a family-oriented show, please contact us by phone, fax, or email. Open Window, a passageway to your mind.
You studied, took driver's ed, you bugged your parents to let you practice driving, the driveway, the parking lot, then whoa, the street. And you're gonna throw it all away over drinking? You worked hard to get your hands on this little piece of plastic. Hang on to it. Underage drinking and drunk driving aren't legal. They're not smart.
A message from the American beer industry and America's broadcasters.
You know trouble can start when the clock hits 3.
When there's no place after school for kids to be.
Nothing to do but hanging on city streets.
When mom and dad are working to make ends meet. Now it's time to beat the street.
With after-school programs, city kids aren't left alone and vulnerable. They keep on learning between 3 and 6, but these programs need your support. Join with the Urban League to keep them going. Call now, because it's
time to beat the street.
Hi, welcome back to Open Window. I'm just sitting here looking at this because I'm so excited because Nathan McCall is with us today on Open Window. Nathan, again, thank you so much for coming back here on Open Window with us, and we're talking about your book that's out right now called What's Going On. We were talking about Michael Jordan for a minute there, and we talked a little bit about the revolution of basketball and really Michael making all this money, and I said it's about money, you know, making money in America, right? But Michael made all this money, and he was chosen. However, he still considered who he is when he was fired, which is news to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He was fired from?
He was fired from the Washington Wizards. He was in management there. And, you know, they brought him in to help sort of, you know, get more exposure. Michael Jordan coming in and, you know, he made another comeback and played for the Wizards.
Is that going along the lines that we talked about earlier? Thinking that when you have become like the basketball players that you saw get out of the car and go on the court to play this team and they didn't really put forth very much effort because the stereotype was there, you know, they're the best players anyway and nobody can touch them, and all of a sudden they get knocked off the court and they lost a game.
I think
we tend to forget who we really are.
Forget. Some of us don't find out in the first place.
Okay.
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 Some of us allow other people to define who we are, and that was the point that I was making in this piece. That many blacks buy into the definition of them that's given to them by someone else. And so I think in the case of Michael Jordan, maybe he believed the hype, maybe he believed that they respected him because of who he was. They respected him on the basketball court. Off the basketball court, he was fired and he was treated just like Joe Sixpack gets treated, you know, working for, you know, some firm and discarded. So young people need to understand that money alone does not mean power. You know, there are a lot of folk with money who don't have much power at all.
That's profound. That's interesting. Let's go on a little bit further in your book, and let's talk about some other issues too, because you mentioned some other basketball players and some other important people who have really played a mark here in America. Yeah,
there have been some. Well, athletes, period. Muhammad Ali is my all-time favorite. Arthur Ashe is second, because here are two people who did not restrict their definitions to what they did in athletics. You know, they forced America to deal with them as intellectual beings and as black men and as strong black men. And so they are the examples that I prefer to follow.
I was reading something here in your book, and it says that athletes, let me see, black men, okay. It's the deep-rooted belief that blacks are more gifted as athletes than whites, but that God somehow shortchanged brothers on brains.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, essentially, I think America has no problem with black male athletes so long as they remain confined to the athletic arena. And again, Muhammad Ali is an excellent example. When Muhammad Ali went beyond the boxing ring and began talking about social issues in America, then folks had a problem with him. He was deemed a real problem. And you find that, I mean, probably the best example of the contradiction right now is the whole debate around affirmative action in education, okay? Now, you'll find colleges, and the top colleges and universities in the country practically begging blacks to come to their schools to play basketball. On the other hand, those blacks who come to their schools without athletics and are coming strictly to compete academically, they don't want them there. And they question whether or not they are entitled and qualified to be there in the first place.
It's interesting. Stay tuned with more with Nathan McCall on Open Window. Stay tuned.
Michael Jordan, UNCF, take one.
We're here to tell you about the College Fund. It was set up to help deserving kids get a chance to be what they want to be. Are there any future doctors in the house?
Yeah!
Any scientists?
Yeah!
What about teachers?
Yeah!
All right, now who's going to play professional basketball? Come on. It's a good job. Please join me and support the College Fund. Your mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Yeah!
Listen up. You think if you get a girl pregnant, it's her problem, right? Wrong. For you, it's all over. All she wrote. Even if a brother doesn't come looking for you, you think I'm going to let you play like nothing happened? You'll be lucky to finish high school. Never mind college. Start thinking with your head. You may be old enough to do it. You aren't old enough to handle it.
Oh, you're fine.
Hi, welcome back to Open Window with my special guest today, Nathan McCall. Nathan, let's go on further in your book. What's going on? Even though you're saying in your book, and I totally agree with your issues that are being presented, let's go back and talk about the basketball players or the athletes. You've got so much of that stuff that's on TV, and these young folk are looking at that. That's what they're looking at. You talked about this little boy in church, sitting beside the little boy in church, and wondering what he was doing because he was doodling on a pad. And you looked over and you saw him. What did you see?
It was the Nike logo. The Nike logo. And so it lets you know where their heads are. And
because they're seeing that all the time.
They're seeing it all the time. They're bombarded with these messages. And so it makes it difficult for parents to present messages that counteract the media messages that kids are bombarded with all the time. Parenting has become much more complicated and difficult now because on the one hand, we're telling kids, go to school, get a good education, develop your intellect. When they look out into the world, they see that black people get rewarded for singing and dancing and bouncing a ball.
Is that contradiction that you talk about in your book?
That's that contradiction. And so it becomes difficult to make that argument to your child that he or she should exert all their energies toward developing their intellect. Because again, they're going to listen to what you say, but they're also going to look out into the world and see
what's
what they
going on.
see.
Yeah.
And what they see is that the people who are trying to get the education are being opposed by universities, colleges and universities who are saying they aren't qualified. But on the other hand, they're being recruited at the gym door, and they're being recruited for American Idol and rewarded for singing and dancing.
That's interesting. Let's go into another chapter of your book, The Father of Our Country. Let's talk about that a little bit.
I wrote that piece when I was in D.C., and I had taken a tour of Mount Vernon, which is the home of George Washington, the so-called founder of our country. And I was struck by that on a number of levels. It's like, I own a house, right? That's my house. I got the deed on it. And it's you walk into my house and suddenly decide that you're the founder of my house. And so that was one notion. That was one notion. Native Americans.
You've been known to be honest, right, in your writings.
Well, and so that was one issue. And the other issue that I was thinking about at the time I took this tour of Mount Vernon, it was around the time when America was steeped in this discussion about family values, black men and family values. This notion that black men don't take care of their children and they're irresponsible. And so I'm taking this tour of Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, and I happened to ask the tour guide, I said, didn't George Washington own slaves?
And didn't he have children?
And didn't he have children? George Washington and Thomas Jefferson fathered